Today, AI is changing how fast organizations can move, but speed alone doesn't create value.
What matters is how clearly teams can define the problem, align around outcomes, and make the right decisions before they accelerate.
I'm Clay Richardson, founder and CEO of Digital Fast Forward.
And I'm Steph Louis, Senior Director of Pega Community and Developer Engagement.
Each episode, we sit down with leaders and practitioners to explore what it really takes to design for value.
And find out how organizations are turning AI-driven speed into meaningful, measurable outcomes.
Welcome to Design to Accelerate.
Conversations on creating value in the age of AI.
Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Design to Accelerate. I'm Clay Richardson, Chief Accelerator with Digital Fast Forward, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Steph Louis.
Thanks, Clay. So excited to be here today, still head of developer and community engagement at Pega. And we are joined by the amazing Kenneth Hearn, who is AVP of Digital Process Automation at Navy Federal. It's a mouthful.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what that actually means.
Well, so I started my career as a developer over 20 years ago now. Moved on to Navy Federal for the past 7 years. So came in focusing on process automation, process digitization, looking for ways to be able to help optimize our business areas to be able to solve for their business workflows.
Yeah, so that's an interesting background. So you started focused on development, but then made this transition. What was that like? Just kind of going from being a developer to now being AVP of Digital Process Automation. What was that journey like for you?
Many years, and going through different roles along the way. You know, starting off as the developer, moving on to an architect, designing the different systems, manager, managing teams, and leading different areas into the AVP over the overall area. So got the opportunity to see early stages with inside of software development where I sat as a developer in a room and I built what I was told to build. No feedback to our end customers and consumers at the end. And then eventually worked my way into talking with our requirements analysts. It's like, how do we get opportunities for the technology people to be in the room with our clients and our customers to hear their pain points so that we can actually understand what they're going through so that when we're designing something from a solutions perspective, we're not just thinking of it purely from the technology. What can the technology do? How can I make this happen?
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting this season on the podcast, we're exploring this journey to AI-driven design and how is AI disrupting design. And I know we talked a little bit before about kind of you getting involved in design around design thinking, right? And I'd be curious just to hear how that shift has been to go from you're using design thinking to ideate to now starting to use AI. What has that transition been like for you?
So I understand a lot of people think of it being very disruptive, but it's a steady flow from my experience going through life. You know, once again, back to isolated, didn't even get to understand what the business need was, just being told what to build, to then putting together groups, getting involved with the clients. So we started off when we set up our Automation Center of Excellence at Navy Federal, having the opportunity to put together pods where we could actually have a developer, analyst, stakeholders from the business, Scrum Master, kind of looking through what the process is, what's the pain points, and coming up with a solution, talking through it together. That has allowed us to take on technologies like Pega's App Studio to where we could actually do some rapid prototyping. We could also trade off some of that design experience from just the technical person to someone else that's a little bit less technical, maybe the technical analyst going inside of that. So now with AI coming in and technologies, you can actually start kind of shifting that to where the business is able to start ideating over their own solutions and not having just the technical person lead that.
It's very helpful.
And do you think it's a leading question. Do you think having both the business person and the technical person not only accelerates that, but reduces risk of things changing downstream, kind of like the melding of the minds?
Yes, so 100%. So it's seeing the actual problem that you're trying to solve and hearing it from the person who's experiencing it, or the opportunities I had of actually shadowing someone doing the current business process.
Yeah.
Eyes on what they're actually going through, makes it a totally different experience versus just hearing a set of requirements and building something. So then the business, maybe they're actually the ones going through that painful current process. They're able to start working with the tool, seeing hands-on what that solution is going to look like in the end, seeing the different possibilities of how they can manipulate their flow. We were talking today, hearing areas like if they don't understand what the technology is capable of doing, they don't know what's out there for them to be able to solve. So when they're working with this, they're able to know what else they could be mentioning their pain points so that they can know what we could solve. And so it goes both ways. We're hearing their problems and they're hearing the possibilities of how it could be solved.
A lot of times is the more the business and technical teams are working together, the faster you get adoption, as opposed to this traditional throw it across the wall, right? Like, hey, business, here's our requirements. They throw it to the technical team, and then the technical team goes and builds and comes back and says, hey, is this what you want? Right? Like, I see a lot of teams working like that. Like what you're describing, it sounds like you're really in the room working with them, and you have faster cycle to get to solution that is going to be adopted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So earlier on in the scenario where I was a developer just getting a set of requirements, we'd also have to push back the requirements. Like, well, this is not technically possible to implement what you got signed off from the client. So then getting in the room with them, we can actually resolve that up front before the client signs off on their requirements. So same thing, having them in there, they feel heard, they get bought in on it, and then for adoption, and then we're able to make sure those requirements are right up front.
One of the things that's scary, I know I've found as more clients adopt Blueprint and use AI, is the business sees the possibilities faster, but sometimes the actual architecture is not thought about. Like, how do you think about that? So you're showing, if you think about a Blueprint session, you're building capability, then you're showing the client saying, hey, this is what's possible. Client's like, I want that, right? Like, press the button. Like, how do you manage that process of like just making sure what is being shown is technically sound and feasible, right? And there's a whole bunch of questions behind that, but I just want to see, how are you starting to think about that, like the speed that Blueprint gives you to go at, but being able to balance that with your current architecture?
So prior to Blueprint, we'll start there.
Yeah,
we would have solution design sessions. And generally you would have your architect already kind of lay out what we're going to kind of build so that we can go into that session because we know the process definition that's going into it. So it's just tweaking it, getting the adjustments to the business, doing that. Now with Blueprint, the business often can be the one kind of starting some of that, or the analyst can be the one starting that. And then we're validating it. So you don't have to think so much about, will this work architecturally? Because Blueprint, just like with working on a low-code, no system, it lays out some of those guardrails that keeps you in place. So you know that it's going to come up with something that is possible. Maybe there's some technical aspects behind the scene you still have to finish, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, but you're able to trust it to be able to create that framework for you.
It's really good.
Yeah. And I like that, creating the trust to create it for you. You're not doing the necessarily mean like, oh, we can do this in 2 weeks, like the ship it thing, because there are, yes, it's structurally sound, you can trust it, but dotting the I's, crossing the T's is still going to take some time.
You have guardrails and frameworks that you're working with inside of it that allows it to be able to be more reliable.
Yeah, it's not that, it's this on the back end of it.
Yeah, one thing I'm interrogating you now, so I apologize in advance. But one thing I notice teams struggle with at the beginning of bringing AI into design is getting the sign off from a security standpoint to actually put material into the AI, whether it's Blueprint or other, right? Like, how did you guys process that? I mean, you're an enterprise bank, right? And so, a credit union. And so I'm sure that at the beginning that had to cross your mind is like, well, how do we make sure that what we're putting in here, security-wise, everybody's good with? How did you guys deal with that?
Well, there was lots of reviews process on it. Maybe if it also set up an entire AI working group to be able to set up what is our practices, what we expect, what are the guiding principles that we have, making sure that we're keeping our members' information confidential and protected, our process information confidential and protected. So architecture, security reviews, kind of understanding how the Blueprint technology works, where the data is going to lie, how is it transmitted. All of that was considered inside there. A big part for us with Blueprint is we're able to actually have our data and those blueprints inside of our client tenant inside of Pega Cloud. That adds a little bit more trust and confidence that we're able to control that.
Yeah.
Looking at how the blueprints are also locked down to the user that's creating them or who they share it with, and that's kept internally inside of Native Federal. So then we know we have trust and confidence inside of that. There's also a bit of restriction of what we're allowed to put in there.
Right.
We wouldn't be putting in actual member information, actual transactional information from our banking process, but our business flows and our business process.
So primarily business flows going in, your business process going in, but making sure there's guardrails and governance around no client-specific data or strategy, that sort of thing.
And then from the other risk aspect of it, for us, looking at the uses of AI, you can use it at design time, or you can use it at runtime. Runtime, you don't know what's going to happen. It's going to perform an action at the end of it, and that's much more risky than at design time. So when we're looking at the different use cases of where we're going to use AI at Navy Federal, being able to use it at a tool, at a design time, where a human's still going to ultimately make the decision whether or not this is the correct design of the process before we go forward with implementation and then rolling it out to production, much safer. So there was less concerns and risks at that point in time.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Just some teams, they bog down in that stage and just say, you know what, we can't put anything in, right? Whether it's Blueprint or otherwise. And so having a process to put the governance in place, I think, is essential.
Right. Because I think another theme of this is AI is it's too broad of a term.
Yes.
Right, when you use it, right?
Yeah,
So you may use it for your customers on the website, which is very, very different than how you're actually using it at design time to make some of those decisions. At runtime, it's maybe a chatbot or something like that. I think that the umbrella term is hurting us at this point.
Yes, AI, like you said. And we hear it internally with our business partners asking, like, I want AI. And it's like, well, you technically have AI. You may not have generative AI.
Do you roll your eyes when people ask you? Yeah. Do you roll your eyes, or you've learned not to roll your eyes? Got
to control some of those facial expressions. And so just be curious, Be curious, well, so what are you trying to accomplish? And, well, have you considered this possibility? Those types of questions, because ultimately we want to solve the problem. We want to be able to serve our members better. I want to be able to serve my business partners to make sure that they can get what they want. And so it's just curiosity in that sense, but it's confusing a lot, agents, agentic, all the different terms, and not everyone is using the same word to mean the same thing.
It's interesting because I see teams taking different approaches with tools like Blueprint. One approach is to actually say, we've talked about this a little bit, opportunistically, we have this amazing tool that can help us identify and surface new opportunities, right? That's one path, meaning, we're going to go out, find things, build a business case around it. And then we see teams that are using it for really enterprise transformation. So it'll be, hey, these are 5 specific flows we want to completely transform. Start thinking through that. And I'm curious, what path are you guys on? Is it a little bit both, or kind of opportunistic and enterprise?
I guess a little bit of both. Yeah. So a lot of our projects that we've had for the past couple of years have been around application rationalization. So looking to transform existing applications. Yeah. So we have an already standard process. It's been digitized maybe somewhere else. Maybe there's some gaps inside of it. So not only can we transform, but then we can enhance those applications along the way. And Blueprint gives you the opportunity to be able to visualize the end solution, basically take some of the restriction that we had, where you would need to go and say, okay, I'm looking to improve this process. Let me talk to an architect to be able to get their buy-in. It's like, can we actually make these changes? Will the technology support that? So Blueprint kind of gets that earlier on into the process. We've used it for a little bit into onboarding new processes, taking in the procedure documents, kind of looking at them from that perspective. A lot of that goes into the ideation. Process improvement teams now, they're out there looking at an existing process that the business might be doing, gathering that information. And previously, once again, after they come up with where they think they want to improve the workflow, now they're going to talk to platform teams. Hey, can your platform be able to solve and solution for this? Can this platform be able to solve and solution for it? What are my options inside there? And I think Blueprint gets you, especially that technology being specific to Pega, gets you that answer for what Pega can and can't do. Right. When we're still in the ideation stage, there's not a project, there's not funding to put resources in to start designing this.
It's very powerful.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Where does it come into play in the do we fund this
Right.
project?
That's
Right? Is like this, is that part of the proof point? Is it an idea? Like ideation, again, like talking about something that can mean a lot of different things. Is it like a business is like, hey, I think this is really slow, I want to do this. Do you use that way up front to get the funding, or is it after, like, hey, we're going to do this thing? Curious.
It varies. There's different paths. Sometimes there's already a funding project, so we're using it to make sure that we got the requirements correctly.
Yep.
I would say that's probably the majority of our scenarios. Now we're branching out more and more into, okay, how do we take this and find a, whether we're process mining or just overall doing a process improvement analysis, take that and turn that into an actual opportunity, and then find funding for that opportunity and push it forward. Ideally, I'd like to be able to use it more for refining the existing flows that we already have.
Yeah, I feel like this conversation is bringing me 360 to my past, because what you walked through earlier reminded me when I was at Forrester, when we started the research around low code, we actually talked to Navy Federal about Lotus Notes and how, like, there were so many Lotus Notes applications at the time. I can't remember, something like 2,000 or something crazy.
Definitely
that needed to be
thousands.
Yes. and I remember me and my colleague at the time, John Reimer, when we did this interview with Navy Federal, and we were like, yeah, you need a better way to get these converted over to something new. And that's when some of the low code research started bubbling up. And I guess when you think about opportunistic, are you still looking at those sort of applications to modernize, using Blueprint to help you?
So we're at the tail end of that.
Okay. I was going to say that was like 10 or 15 years ago, right? Okay.
So most of those have been transformed.
Okay.
Different platforms depending on the process, kind of looking at where the best fit with inside of our architecture and the different platforms that we have. Being the Pega delivery side of it, we were able to use Blueprint on some of them to be able to do and take those processes in.
Very cool. I know there's a new capability around
Yep.
the Lotus capability. So
absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's interesting you say 10 to 15 years ago is when the whole thing started. Things might have changed since then. I guess you're done, so the question's kind of moot of like how you've changed it. So I just retract that question. But actually, kind of speaking of now, what's next on this whole transformation? It's a very broad question, but vibe coding is how do you think that will be helpful or harmful to, because it seems like you've established a really good ideation process. There's trust built between the business and IT, you're using it, and vibe coding can go either way. What's your viewpoint on that?
I think it's going to accelerate. Once again, we have a tool to be able to either build a low-code application or Blueprint to be able to start initiating the design of an application, and you have technology that you can now basically essentially talk to and say, hey, I want to make this change. We used to sit in a room doing rapid prototyping, and you would talk to the developer who would sit there and have a prototype and make a change to that prototype and iterate on it in the room. So you're doing the same conversation, just with the technology itself, so that it can be able to make those changes and adjustments, whether you're vibe coding with inside the design or vibe coding in the implementation of that design. So I think there's a lot of power for that. Once again, providing tools for the people to be able to do more easier.
Do you think the business is going to kind of retract some of the trust or be a little bit more nervous that the person that's just typing in with something that's like a complete bigger black box, are they going to be nervous?
I guess it really depends on the personality of the individual. One of my favorite things was watch one of our developers be sitting in a requirements session and hearing the details of it, and they're off screen on their computer creating a prototype, whether they built it in App Studio or some other technology, and then at the very end of the meeting be like, hey, can I demo you a possible solution? And they're just, wow.
Yeah.
It's the same magic.
Yeah.
So for them, it's a black box. It's off screen. A person did it. A person did it with the power of a development studio. A person did it the power with an AI vibe coded agent to be able to build it. They're still trusting the technology. They're trusting the people who are using the technology. I think as long as you have that trust and relationship there, the concern of whether or not it was how much the software assisted it versus the person controlling that software, it's still the human's input.
I'd be curious to walk through your ideation process or stages. Like, what does that look like, just high level right now for you?
So what do you mean by the ideation? Like,
so someone comes to you, says, "Hey, I got a great idea for something that can help us do business better." Like somebody comes to you with an idea, business, like what are the steps you go through now? Let's say with Blueprint included, what are the steps you go through to go from person has said, I have an idea, to actually getting it funded, high level?
There's a lot of different paths for that. I wish I could say that we were refined well enough to say that we're consistent in every single way. And oftentimes these will end up being hallway conversations that initiate into a follow-up discussion and meeting. And previously it was finding that right person who could help rapidly come up with a prototype, come up with a possibility of what we could be able to solve for this. Now we got a use case. Now we can take that forward with funding, and finding that right person and that connection to be able to do it. Get your business case, get a demand created for us, and backing a decision for which platform that's going to be, and so forth. The same things are happening from that path of getting your use case put together. You have a little bit better refined use case at times if you've already started going down the Blueprint path of it. The Blueprint doesn't actually have to be used for building something inside of Pega.
Right, exactly.
Getting the business process organized, the flow, you still go into our enterprise architecture. They can make that decision. It's like, you know what? This flow is correct. Your need is right. It aligns better with one of our other platforms. We have similar processes or adjacent processes in that platform. So we'll take that same workflow and go and implement it in a different technology.
It's very powerful.
Yep. Yeah. And again, it's not about the tool. It's about how you're using it to create, people are visual, right? To create a really good visual for people to align on, to be able to then insert, okay, this makes sense over here, makes sense over there, but just using it in the fit for purpose for you.
It's the same process that we've been doing. We just have different tools and technology, which makes me wonder, like, I see my industry and colleagues that I know in different companies and what they're doing, but like the role of solution designer, it seems like that responsibility is moving around in some organizations to where does it start? Who's the one that's starting it? Previously the design was on just the IT side or just the expert. Thinking my career, so I went from developer, engineer to architect. The architect, I architect the design, and I see that control
friction
federating out maybe to different areas. So what other areas are you seeing that adoption?
It's interesting because that's the question I was going to ask you, what you're seeing, but it's definitely in flux. I mean, this is a lot of the work that we're doing now is, solution designer term has been around for a long time. It's not a new term, but what it actually means with AI, we're seeing it change dramatically. So you're at the forefront of this, if I'm going to be very candid, where, the old BA role was actually, I say old, like we're kind of, we're previewing what's to come. But BAs typically ended up being more requirements jockeys, right? And so a lot of what we're seeing is, well, AI can take care of that requirements jockeying. What you're seeing with Blueprint is like, well, Blueprint is basically gathering the requirements based on what you're putting in. And so solution designer has to become someone who is not focused on just tracking paper, moving things around, but solution designer becomes a value architect, right? It becomes the person that, when we talk about this process, from beginning to end, they're responsible for surfacing what is the value, making sure that value, when you're working with Blueprint and AI, is reflected. So you don't end up with just, we built something that's cool, but it may not get value. And then that solution designer is also responsible for making sure that the value is created.
Yeah. And I want to jump into, because you kind of asked, what Clay was saying. I will respond with what I'm seeing when I'm talking to organizations. I think there is a struggle on where does the solution designer fit? Right. Is it in business or IT? Right. And I think it's a hard question to answer, but it's not the same for every organization.
Okay.
Because what I'm seeing from like the business, if we think about like the old world of citizen developer, that kind of they stood up their own thing, but even within the individual, there was a range of technical acumen of like you can build just the idea in Blueprint, or you can actually go to the high fidelity. So I don't think there's a one size fits all for where they sit, but organizations are going to struggle with that organizational question because this is the way we've always done it. Technicals over here in IT, businesses over here. Even if you've embraced the citizen developer, I see that kind of conflict already starting to happen. And I know it's an important question because that matters to organizations. But for me, I was like, I don't care. Like we're enabling you to do better, but it's going to be a question.
Yeah. And to me, I'm with you. I'm excited to get the problem solved.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Let's find the solution versus argue who has which role and which responsibility. Ultimately, IT, we're going to be supporting the technical implementation of it. So there's a point to be honest, we question what Blueprint creates at times, the rules and rule sets, and we review them and make sure that they meet our standards that we have for what we're building. We're going to make sure that we can continue to upgrade and maintain our products. So, trust and verify kind of aspect of it. So same thing, you're relinquishing some of that responsibility more to the analyst or to the business themselves, not even the technical analyst, but you're going to kind of check it along the way as you take their output, you analyze it, and it moves on through the process until eventually it gets delivered into production.
It's really interesting. When we think about the solution designer, it's a different skill set. Like what we talked about solution designer before versus what we're talking about now. It's a different skill set. And I'm curious, what have you seen as essential skills as you stepped into leveraging or using AI to drive design? Like, what do you see as essential skills that maybe weren't as critical in the past?
It's an evolution. You as you get more tools, you start learning how to use them and leverage them. I know it's been around forever, BPMN, having the ability to lay out a flow and stuff like that. So it's understanding that business process. So you having that person that's curious about knowing what the process is, but then also having that logical flow of information and process. To me, I used to always think of it a technical mind to be able to think about logic, and that's because I worked with for loops and different, actual programming logic in that sense. But it's still that same logical process. When I move from this stage to this stage, following these individual steps, to be able to have that detailed oriented aspect of how do we get from the beginning of the process to the end of the process and every step of the way.
Do you mind me asking, what's the size of your team?
About 100 different developers, Scrum Masters, analysts, testers.
About roughly solution designers. How many would you say are solution designers in your team? Sorry, I'm really putting you on the hot seat here.
That's kind of a tough question to answer because what is a solution designer and who has which aspects inside of that? If you want to go up from the strict technical side of that, that would be our lead system architects. Ultimately control that decision. We have about 4 of them. And they support more than one Scrum team to be able to handle the deliveries on that. So if you want to go down to that hard gateway, that's where we're at there. But the idea is to empower everyone to have a part in it. Our analysts know how to use Blueprint. They're the ones help championing it with the business area. So that doubles up that number.
This is really good. I got like a million more questions, but I think I'm being told we're close to time.
You can see it in my face.
I can see it on the side of my eye. So anything, just closing?
No, I just think that kind of any closing things, what's next for you? Like as you think about the next year, sometimes you've been asking 5 years, but no one can predict that.
Right.
So,
right.
Just kind of, I think you've kind of answered it with your goal of like just opening up the aperture of people that can start to design with Blueprint and partner with those LSAs. Anything else that you want to leave everybody with?
It's empowering people, empowering everyone to be able to do more, and which is what ultimately allows us to be able to do things faster and better.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. This was great.
This has been amazing. Thank you for being a guest, and thank you for our audience for being here with us all the way to the end of the show. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again on Design to Accelerate. Thanks for listening to Design to Accelerate.
This is a space for thoughtful conversations about how people not just technology, create value.
When we let human judgment lead and AI accelerate, better outcomes always follow.
Follow and subscribe to keep engaging in this meaningful conversation.